We are Rogue Media Sports.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And it is the Doomsday podcast. Ed Werder standing by with Matt Mosley. Of course, we're in the Frito Nation Productions. Mark Frito Friedman, our producer, standing by as well. And Ed, we both watched this with great interest tonight. We're going to get right to the game. Don't want anybody to be worried about that. Lots to discuss. Cowboys get a big win on the road against the Arizona Cardinals. But all eyes were on the sideline to start this, the National Anthem. It has become an interesting thing over the past couple of seasons because of what Colin Kaepernick started with the protests. And then, of course, in the last 48 hours with what the president's comments were and what he said about the NFL. And then the NFL made its decision, and not everybody was doing the same kind of thing. But we saw the response from several teams across the NFL. Jerry Jones and the Cowboys go with an interesting look before the game. Before the anthem started, the Cowboys are out there, Ed, and you saw it all. Lisa Salters before the game. You've had to do a lot of the sideline work, especially recently, Ed. You're becoming a big-time sideline guy for Westwood One. And Lisa Salters basically gave a quick summary before the game. I'm sure you saw this. She said basically Larry Fitzgerald reached out to Jason Witten, and they couldn't reach any kind of agreement. So her report basically was that the Cardinals and the Cowboys could not agree to stand together and sort of be unified, the two teams. Cowboys wanted to do their own thing. And so the Cowboys, before the National Anthem, actually take a knee. And I got to say, I was a little bit shocked to see it, and Jerry's on his knee. There he is at 75 or whatever he is now, 76. The man's on a knee, and then they bounce back up, and then arm in arm, there they are for the National Anthem. Ed, you're watching this thing. You've followed it. You've talked to people, former Cowboys, a lot of folks, what they think about this weekend. What did you make of the Cowboys' decision to make a statement but then get back up on their feet for the National Anthem?
Well, I think there was a lot of curiosity about how the Cowboys were going to handle this for a lot of reasons. I mean, obviously, they're on the big Monday night stage. They're arguably the most visible team in pro sports. And, of course, Jerry Jones, as is uncharacteristic of him, had said nothing about what to expect or what his point of view was based on President Trump's direct challenge to NFL players by saying those who protested, in his mind, were sons of bitches who should be taken off the field and fired. And I don't think the players had much of a choice but to issue a strong response. We heard from a number of owners in the NFL. We saw a number of them on Sundays standing with their arms interlinked with their players on the sideline during the National Anthem. But Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, through a series of meetings with players and Jason Garrett, the coaching staff, came up with a plan that seemed fairly brilliant, which was they did kneel, as you said, all lined up side by side, shoulder to shoulder, arms interlocked, including Jerry Jones and other members of the Jones family. And they did kneel, so they honored and paid homage to all of the other players and teams and unified themselves with that group against Donald Trump's comments. And yet they then rose and, standing, acknowledged and respected the flag. I mean, I think they accomplished two really important things that we haven't really seen anybody else in the league do this year. And I talked to Chad Hennings when I saw this. He's a obviously former Air Force fighter pilot. and former Cowboys defensive lineman, and he told me that this was the best compromise that they could have done. He said the NFL has unfortunately backed themselves into a no-win situation, but the Cowboys did pretty much the only thing that they could do to come out respectable on both sides.
Yeah, I think it was very interesting. I'm glad you talked to Chad, because obviously he has a unique perspective. Another great friend of ours and a fan of this podcast, a man who's starting to understand on-demand podcast, and that's Roger Staubach. He'll be on with us soon. But they have a unique perspective on all of this. And so the Cowboys decided, and Ed, I wanted to read to you, by the way, some quotes coming in. We're taping this just really 30, 40 minutes after the game. So some quotes starting to pour in as we're taping this podcast that you'll hear at midnight and hopefully listen to all day tomorrow. Des Bryant, by the way, Ed, and you'll remember this in camp, right before we got to camp, Des was basically asked about it, and he said he didn't want to say anything, and he took some criticism for that, for not maybe taking a stand. Des Bryant quoted saying in the locker room after the game, "Trump can't divide this." That was a clear shot at Trump, sitting on that knee like that. So that's from Des Bryant. Jerry Jones with several comments. "I've never been more proud of an association. We all agreed our players wanted to make a statement about unity and equality. We stand and respect the flag, but we also want to be able to demonstrate unity and equality is important. They did both." And Ed, I will say this, quotes coming in from DeMarcus Lawrence to NFL Network also, and basically DeMarcus Lawrence made it clear that he really respected and was appreciative, a lot of players were, that Jerry would stand knowing they wanted to do something to make a statement of unity after what Trump had said, and so he came forward and made some comments basically praising Jerry for standing behind the team 100%. Ed, I want you to comment on this. This comes in the face of some reports out there, and who knows, they may have ended up being false reports, that Cowboys players were basically being told, don't you dare do anything. I think the fact that Jerry went down there and did that with the players showed that, hey, he's behind them. He knows that a lot of them felt the need and the desire to make a statement, and he was not going to leave them hanging or put them in a position where they would have looked bad to him if they made that decision to protest in some way.
Well, President Trump's comments, in my opinion, put the owners in a position where they had to stand with their players in a very public way. And like I said before, there was a lot of curiosity about Jerry Jones's position on this because it's uncharacteristic that he remains silent. He speaks on almost everything of significant importance in the NFL, and yet for 48 hours he said nothing about this. He also is among the handful of owners who donated $1 million or more to Donald Trump's election campaign. And so obviously there was the potential for him to have a different point of view than most of America on this particular subject of the appropriateness of Donald Trump's comments, not about standing for the anthem. They're two separate things. But I think the other important thing to the Cowboys was, when Jason Garrett was asked about this previously, he spoke on the record about how the Cowboys conduct themselves and the importance of showing the appropriate amount of respect and taking a very traditional approach in honoring the national anthem and the colors before each and every game, as the NFL rulebook actually requires players to do. Now, some teams didn't do that. The Pittsburgh Steelers didn't do it. The Tennessee Titans didn't come out of the locker room. Neither did the Seattle Seahawks, but the NFL rescinded all fines. And so I think, like some people have noted, Donald Trump may have accomplished something quite significant in that he's unified players and owners, the union and the league office in a way that we haven't seen in a very long time.
Yes, and I don't know if that was his intention, but he certainly has pulled that off, and it was fascinating to watch But I tell you what, the game ended up being a pretty fascinating watch as well. Cowboys come out victorious in this one. Frito, if you would play some of the best theme music in all of podcasting, go ahead, sir, play the music. And there it is, the Cowboys with a big-time win to stay and pull into a tie, a three-way tie for first place in the NFC East. They have the win 28-17 at Arizona. And, Ed, you see in the NFL, we saw one with the Giants and Eagles, how quickly things can change. Now, the Eagles held on to that game yesterday, but the Cowboys, for all the world, there was nothing in that entire first quarter and into the second quarter. There was nothing to suggest the Cowboys were going to get anything done in this game. In fact, basically the Cowboys had, and sometimes, I think Jason Garrett leans too heavily on that. We didn't have enough plays. We didn't have many plays. Well, they had three plays in the whole first quarter.
Well, guess what? What happens? Just by one of these curious rules in football is if you don't do anything with your first three downs, then you're kind of required to let the other team have a turn. And so if you do nothing on offense, guess what? The other team's going to have a lot more opportunities on offense if they convert.
Yeah, and that's what happened. The Cardinals had the ball, and I thought a big-time early thing that happened was the great Phil Dawson from Lake Highlands, from my neighborhood, misses a short field goal, and, boy, that really – 10-0 right there. I think the Cowboys would have felt like, man, we are in trouble here. Sort of kept the Cowboys right in it. And Ed, let's start with the Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. And you saw him early. He was he really obviously couldn't get anything going. The offense looked about like it looked in Denver at first. There was nothing for Zeke, and all of a sudden, when you saw Zeke finally break free on that, they had the 30-yard carry. It sort of galvanized everything. It was like, oh wait, he still can break free. He still can make a big play. And almost from that moment on, there was a 30-yard carry, there was a 20-yard carry. And honestly, there wasn't. I mean, he did a fine game, but those were the big plays from Zeke Elliott.
Well, that was 50 of his 80 yards.
That was 50 of his 80 yards. And Ed, but from then on, the play-action game for the Cowboys was just a killer. And Zeke Elliott, and boy, you saw it with the zone read. He can kill you with his feet. He could extend plays, and he went from. I thought after that first quarter we were going to be in here tonight, Ed, talking about what we talked about last week. When they stop the run or bottle up the run, Dak can't get it done. Dak can't get it done on his own. And then Dak came alive, and, I mean, for the rest of the game, the guy made some gorgeous plays, including throwing the ball on the run. And there's your man, Ed, Bryce Butler, making two huge plays in this ball game. I thought Dak ended up having just a brilliant outing. And one of the things we always talk about Dak, he knows how to protect the ball and not turn the ball over. But he was, to me, Zeke helped, but Dak was the guy who made it all work tonight for the offense.
Well, I think with the most important thing to emerge from this game, other than winning on the road against a good defensive team, was, with all the criticism from the loss in Denver the week before, with teams, now openly challenging Dak Prescott to win the game by throwing the football, it seemed that his ability to throw deep accurately on the move and his general athleticism and physicality was really the difference in the game. He only had 13 completions, but the two throws out of the pocket to Bryce Butler on scoring drives were extraordinary. And again, didn't turn the football over. And then he averaged 9.2 yards per attempt, and he had that incredible 10-yard touchdown run where he took on two defenders at the goal line. And talked to one of the members of the coaching staff out there after the game, and he said the quarterback kind of loaded the offense on his back tonight. He's so mentally strong and competitive And so, a lot of the complaints coming out of the loss in Denver, that Dak was reliant on Zeke's success, that he couldn't win throwing, that he didn't get the ball down the field like Tony Romo would and did. But that's comparing a 12-year veteran quarterback to a young player early in his second year. And he's doing remarkable things like winning. He's 15-4 as a regular season starter. And he has a unique skill set that we saw tonight against the Cardinals. Another member of the staff said his ability to plus his football character really made the difference. He knew he had to make plays. His athletic ability is difficult to stop if you don't plan for it. He showed his ability to get deep chunk plays. I think it's worth noting, Matt, final thought on the offense is both teams had 12 possessions. The Cardinals had the enormous time of possession advantage in the first quarter and overall had 30 more offensive snaps in the game. But the fact is the Cowboys were 3 for 3 in red zone touchdowns. The Cardinals were 1 for 4.
Yeah, they cashed in and made those count. And Ed, let's focus in on what you brought up, though. I mean, that is, there's in the course of a season, there are some iconic plays that happen. And I know when you were a beat man and covering those Cowboys, I mean, you could probably, in about right off the top of your head, could say, okay, these are about the 6 or 7 plays that were just iconic and in sort of season-changing plays. Dak, what you just referred to, getting down to the goal line, it was all it was already a beautiful zone read play that faked everybody out, and there he is running around the right end. I think it's so foreign to us, those of us that love college football. When we see college football plays in the pros, it's kind of fun because it looks different. And I'm so glad the Cowboys are using this. Poor 44 for the Cardinals. What's the young man's name? I mean, he likes to rush. He's a pretty decent player, but my goodness, they sort of used his speed and aggressiveness and the fact that he loves to rush upfield. They just used it against him all night. But let me finish this. Dak gets to the goal line, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to barrel over them, or I'm going to try to fake them out, or I'm going to try to slide. At that point, he literally relied on his athleticism and tried to leap over them. I don't know. There's not too many quarterbacks at that point who can pull that off. Not only did he leap over them, he flipped, and you're thinking, oh, my gosh, should the Cowboys quarterback be doing something like that? Well, he landed beautifully. I mean, my gosh, I wouldn't have been shocked if he landed on his feet. It was, to me, Ed, that's one of those plays that just fuels an entire sideline and an entire team when Dak goes that. Now, I had it written down. Bethel was one of those guys. I think Bethea was one of those guys in that scrum, and he just decided, you know what, I'm going high on you guys. I'm going to go ahead and flip into the end zone.
The consequences weren't the same, and the magnitude of the game certainly doesn't compare, but it reminded me in the moment of John Elway when he dove for the goal line in the Super Bowl, his first Super Bowl win, and was sort of helicoptered. Dak didn't get spun around like that, but the effort by the quarterback, like you said, was so uncommon that it reminded me of that sort of play. And it could be one that, depending on how the season progresses and unfolds from here and what their record finally winds up being and how pivotal this game is viewed, that could certainly be viewed as one of the plays that really personifies the kind of quarterback he is and defines the kind of season ultimately that they have. Because they had really done nothing on offense to that point. And I thought Scott Linehan, the offensive coordinator and play caller, really did a brilliant job under the circumstances, knowing that they were going to be very focused on Ezekiel Elliott. His yards were going to be hard to come by again, of finding a way to let Dak's athletic ability, unique as it is, especially as a mobile quarterback, to affect the run game. And he used it to, like you said, the misdirection, really thwarted the great Cardinals pass rushers all night long. It changed all the angles on them all night long, getting him out of the pocket. But that play, I agree, was really a significant play, and it really showed what the quarterback is all about and how important the game is to him.
All right, and Ed, as we got into the third quarter, it is the Cowboys take over with about 10:29 left in the third quarter, and it's a 7-7 ball game, and they get the ball at the Cardinals 46, and Elliott goes 8. Elliott goes for 3. Elliott goes around right in for 20 yards. Okay, they're starting to kind of impose their will a little bit, and you're reminded of what that felt like last year to have Elliott, kind of setting the tone. And then another somewhat iconic play was Des Bryant on the shallow cross, as John Gruden likes to call it, and then just carrying players toward the end zone. Great individual effort. And I thought it was a neat moment, Ed, or a cool moment for – there were 3 all-pro linemen. We always talk about, this – and this is a great offensive line. But the 3 best offensive linemen were the ones that arrived on the scene and pushed the scrum on into the end zone or toward the end zone, because it was hard to tell if he truly got in. I think it was so impressive, the officials were like, yeah, we're giving him the touchdown. And I think Gruden wanted them to.
I think it's sort of a dangerous play to allow offensive linemen to come charging up the field and just throw themselves into the pile like that and use the force that they generate in doing so. I think really the ball carrier was stopped by the defense, and the whistle should have probably been blown, and that kind of play shouldn't be allowed. But it was a great individual effort by Des Bryant to affect the game, because he knew he wasn't going to have very many opportunities with Patrick Peterson covering him. He's probably the best cover corner in football, and we've said that a lot in the last 3 weeks. And he's gone up against 3 really good players, and he scored a couple times. So that tells you something about how good he is. But that was a special play, because I don't think, and I said this last week, I don't think they use him in the middle of the field enough. And he showed that he understands, the soft spot in the zone, and he can sit down and catch the ball. And then he has some open field running ability that we don't get to see very often. I mean, early in his career, he wanted to return punts because he does have that kind of ability. So
Yes.
I think it's something that they should probably incorporate more often, especially in situations where he's up against a really good corner and they know they're going to struggle to get him the football. But yeah, that was another big play that really showed, a great deal of determination by a special player in this league.
One that prompted Gruden to shout out, "How about them Cowboys?" What do you think fans of other teams think when they hear Gruden? I mean, at that point, now he's a huge fan of the game, but at that point,
it's kind of tongue in cheek when he does that sort of stuff, though. I mean, he uses quite a bit of hyperbole.
You think so? Yeah.
I
just wonder, people sitting at home hear that, exactly what they think. Now, Ed, we'll cross over a little bit to the defensive side of the ball, and I would be remiss if I didn't lead on the defense without what I believe to be, and you could tell me if this is hyperbole, sort of some Mosley hyperbole. I would have to go back several years before I could put together that dominant of a performance on defense. In fact, I would have to probably go back to another DeMarcus. And that would be DeMarcus Ware. But I thought what DeMarcus Lawrence did tonight was completely wrecking offense. And in fact, when they had success in the second half, the Cardinals, and were able to get the ball downfield to Larry Fitzgerald, you would often find that DeMarcus Lawrence was off the field. He took a right tackle who's not used to playing right tackle, apparently, and that is
Jared Valdir,
yes,
former Raider.
Yeah, and that was an embarrassing. That was almost. It wasn't quite as bad, but it was on national TV. It was Winston Justice like. Years ago, the Giants OC and the gang did some things to Winston Justice that will never be talked about above a whisper. 7, 8 sacks, or maybe more. I mean, it was horrific what happened to him tonight. DeMarcus Lawrence might be on his way to getting some sort of enormous contract, whether it be with the Cowboys or another team. But Ed, right now, you have to say that DeMarcus Lawrence is playing like one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL.
Well, he certainly is leading the NFL in sacks with 6.5. And I made the comment tonight on Twitter that Jared Veldheer is confusing me because I don't know if the Cowboys now have DeMarcus Lawrence rushing the passer or Lawrence Taylor rushing the passer. But just as and he's played fantastically well.
Did you get good feedback on that tweet?
Not really. No, I never do. I never get good feedback on anything I post on Twitter. But obviously he's a good athlete. I mean, they traded up to get him because they thought he was the last blue chip edge pass rusher in his draft class. And he's been, set back by suspensions and injuries, and still has a back problem that could, be an issue at any time. But he is a good athlete and has the potential to be a unique pass rusher. But you have to keep in mind, I think, just like, I said with Des Bryant having to go against, 3 really great cover corners to start the season, and the Cowboys offense going up against 3 of the best defensive teams in football to start the season. The other part of the equation here is that DeMarcus Lawrence and the other Cowboys defenders have gone up against 3 really bad offensive lines the first 3 weeks of the season. And quite honestly, I don't think the Rams are that much better next week either. And so I think this same thing is going to carry over. The Cowboys are playing a great defensive team, and they're playing a team that doesn't have a very good offensive line. So their defense may look better than I think it'll play much of the rest of the season. But right now is a pivotal time for a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence to be a dominant player, regardless of the quality of the opposition, because they're trying to break in these young guys in the secondary without having to pay for it. And so pressure on the quarterback is what it's all about. And especially so when you're playing a guy like Carson Palmer, who's a great veteran deep thrower, and Bruce Arians wants to play that way, the Cardinals head coach, but they have a hard time doing it as often as they'd like to because they just can't have the quarterback hold the ball long enough because the offensive line is so bad. And it wasn't just Veldheer. They're playing without their starting tackle on the other side. They're playing without their left guard, Mike Iupati. So the Cowboys were able to take advantage of a situation that I think a lot of teams would take advantage of. And that's not to diminish anything that DeMarcus Lawrence has done. But let's see what he does when they're up against, quality opponents.
Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe we're getting a little bit going overboard, but I get constant questions when I'm writing and chatting with the morning news, the Dallas Morning News, that is, your former newspaper, my former newspaper, and that's what they're wanting to know. Is this, and Ed, you've got this question over the years, is this happening because it's a contract year? And I always want to respond, and I try to respond, why does it matter? Just enjoy it. If he's having an unbelievable season, why do we care so much? Is he only doing this because it's a contract year? Why do we care? Why can't fans just sit there and go, this guy's on pace to have 20 sacks?
Wasn't that also the case when the Cowboys went 12-4? Jason Garrett had not been renewed. He was in the last year of his contract. Dez was in the last year of his contract. DeMarco Murray was in the last year of his contract. And it was really done by design. So, Jerry Jones put those guys in that position because he wanted them to have to prove themselves to earn their financial security. So it's obviously something that motivates people, and I'm sure it's playing some role in motivating DeMarcus Lawrence right now. It would be human nature for it to, but yeah, like you said, who cares? It's having a positive effect, so enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Now, there's one player I want to mention on defense, another player, and you may have a couple more players you want to mention. Before I do that, Ed, let me just say this. I'm so pleased that the good folks at Harry's Razors have just said, we like Doomsday, we're in. We're just in with these guys. We want to ride with these guys for a while. We like Werder's mustache.
And goatee.
And goatee that he has, and we like the red with just a little tint of gray mixed in. It's a good look, but we like
You're being kind now.
We like the way Ed kind of shapes that up, and even the great Tuck said that his dad, they're in Coosa County, Alabama. Boy, I love Coosa County, and says that his dad is now using all these Harry's razors. So I just want to say, Harry's, shout out to you. We love you, and we're glad you're on board with Doomsday. And as I get right back into this, Jordan Lewis, that's a name I want to bring up with you. I thought, and that's a guy who, man, that was a tough thing to get thrown into. Struggled a little bit at some times against Denver. Did have a pick in that game, so had some up and down moments. You talk about a guy who was willing to come up and tackle. I mean, this guy. I mean, they were throwing the ball out there. They were trying all those, dump off the ball. Some of the wide receiver screens. Jordan Lewis, I thought. Obviously DeMarcus Lawrence was the best on defense. I thought Sean Lee had a fine ball game. Jordan Lewis is right up there. He's right up there with a really nice performance in this game.
Yeah, and obviously with Cheeto Awuzie out for this week, and Orlando Scandrick playing, but obviously we saw that gruesome photograph on ESPN of his hand after the surgery, and he did have to leave because obviously conditioning issues, had to get an IV, so he was out for a while. Xavier Woods came in and played, so they're obviously very thin back there. But yeah, he's shown great promise for a young guy who really didn't do a whole lot in camp and played very sparingly in the preseason, to be out there, on the field with a guy like Larry Fitzgerald, who had one of the best nights of his career, not really because of anything Jordan Lewis did or didn't do. But yeah, I thought he played well. Obviously, I thought Rod Marinelli, tried to play a lot of defensive backs. They were having success just rushing three. And so as John Gruden said, this was a strategy the Cowboys used against Aaron Rodgers last year, and they used it against Matt Stafford, where they felt like I could get pressure with three and create coverage issues in the back end with 6 DBs, and that's what they did most of the night against Carson Palmer. And certainly Jordan Lewis's performance is a big part of that. Having Scandrick play through his injury was a significant factor. I think I'm a little troubled by Anthony Brown, the young corner who played so well as a 6th-round pick last year. Had a penalty tonight, was involved in at least 2 of the touchdown passes that the Cowboys gave up in the game. So I think they've got to get Awuzie back here as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think Awuzie would help. And now, Ed, you were talking about a lot of players. You did not mention because of injury and because they had to kind of get deep into that secondary, Kayvon Frazier had to come out there for a little while and help out. Xavier Woods continues to be an interesting player. One of the announcers called him Xavier Rhodes. Is that somebody else we know? Is that like a guy from
Minnesota
the Vikings?
Corner.
Okay.
Excellent Vikings corner.
Okay.
The Cowboys wish he was Xavier Rhodes.
Although I like him. I kind of like him. I think
he's not Xavier Rhodes.
No, he's not. He's not. But, yeah, we all make mistakes. And McDonough, I thought, hey, I don't know if you ever cross paths with McDonough at ESPN. He's kind of sneaky funny. I need to just say that. There's a couple of lines I liked. I like to be sort of a media critic. Golden would, every time Golden came in and they tried to throw a pass to him, Golden was trying to say he was interfered with. And McDonough had a funny line with that. And I just think he's very dry. And he
leads the league in ratio of plays and complaints per play, or
yes,
something like that.
Yes, I thought it was funny. I
challenging calls.
I kind of like Madonna. Tirico's a friend of mine, and I got a lot of love for Mike Tirico. But Sean McDonough's fit in just fine, and he's doing well. In fact, I think I could channel his voice. I almost did it just a minute ago. I think I could get McDonough. He's just got a very he's dry. He does not get too excited, but I kind of like how he calls the game. Okay, enough about my media takes. I did want to say this. At some point in the game, late in the game, have you seen those things they do on ESPN now? And locally here, they were showing the game on ABC, by the way, WFAA. Glad to have that. They'll put a little graphic up, and it'll say, ESPN Extra or ESPN
Next gen stats.
Next gen. Who are these people, Ed? I mean, you and I, we've been helped at times by people who look up things for us. Now, you're a guy who likes to do your own homework. I'm not. So I leaned more on the ESPN Next Level people than you probably did.
The disappointing thing about you is not only don't you like to do your own homework, you're not even willing to have somebody else do it. So you're just totally unprepared.
I like to wing it. I'm prepared. I've got a lot of notes tonight. Who are these next gen people? Like this almost seems like a Star Trek type thing. Who are these people? Are they the next level
I think
people?
It's a service, it's like a pro football focus service. They're what do they call these new groups of statistic mavens? What do they call
analytics people? Yeah.
Analytics people. It's that genre of people covering football. And I got to say, first of all, ESPN Research. When I was there, I thought it was the best department we had. They're an amazing group of people with amazing resources, and they give reporters the kind of context that's really unavailable anywhere else. So if they can find something better than that group, then we're all well served.
Next time they hire me, I'm going to use that group. I may have not really relied too much on them.
I think you could have saved yourself a lot of time. Crunching the numbers and using your abacus and your sundial like you do.
I used to write like 5,000 words a day. I mean, I still can't believe I was involved in something like that. Well, I think if I went back to ESPN, I would create a role for me where I didn't have to work quite that much, and that was.
Let's hope that's something you have to do.
Okay. Now listen. The reason I brought up the next geners or the next generation, whoever these people are, at one point late in the game, they throw it up on the screen. 14 plays where the Cowboys rushed 3.1 yards per play. And I just have to say, part of the reason the Cowboys had so much success was because a 3-man rush, DeMarcus Lawrence was wrecking their offensive line, even though they had their 5 offensive linemen and sometimes even a tight end in there trying. As you see, by the way, the time poor Grisham, they tried to leave him in there. Oh, my goodness. And DeMarcus just disposed of him so quickly. And just
Well, don't forget, even when they're sending out 5 receivers, which is what Bruce Arians wants to do on as many plays as possible. He's very aggressive with the passing game. Don't forget that still leaves 5 offensive linemen to block 3. So it's an embarrassment when you allow even occasional pressure with a 3-man front should not happen, let alone the quarterback being besieged on a regular basis like Carson Palmer was against the Cowboys. I think the Cardinals will have a lot of concerns about their offensive line coming out of this game.
I think you're right, and you've hit on a lot of this. I mean, there's a lot of shoddy offensive line play. There's a lot of shoddy safety play. Hey, I'm seeing it in college football and the NFL right now. But now on the offensive line, just to stay with the thought, which I'm not great at, is I mean, the Giants are horrific. Although they had this one moment where we thought we saw the Giants offense that some people had predicted was going to be some kind of juggernaut, and it happened. And that's what leads me to say this, Ed. As we sit here on, after the Cowboys go to 2-1, and they're right, Eagles 2-1. Now the Redskins 2-1. Redskins will be on Monday Night Football next week. In fact,
against the Chiefs?
Against the Chiefs at Arrowhead.
In a game, I'll be covering that game.
Oh, we'll have you right there, right in the middle of that Westwood one. By the way, Westwood one guy got a little TV time tonight at the end of the game. I'm thinking, I'm ready to hear from Dak or somebody, or DeMarcus. I'm ready to hear from all those guys. And they go down there, and it's DeMarcus, and it's the Westwood one guy. And Ed, let me just say this. I'm sure it was a nice guy, but he was not dressed as I would expect you to be dressed. He got
it's radio, so
I know, but it was just kind of a really. I know. I'm fine with you not wearing coat and tie. I want you to go with a beautiful Travis Matthew pullover or something like that. That guy just went with a really kind of untucked golf shirt, like something I would wear to play with you, like on the golf course. Okay. And I don't want you to do that. Okay.
That is bad.
Yeah, it was just not a great look for him, and I don't know exactly who was doing the game. Kurt Warner, was he with Harlan?
He was with Kevin Harlan.
Isn't Harlan
the group
fun?
I'll be with next week, and the one I was with in Denver several weeks ago.
Okay, all right. It'll be good to have you there. But, okay, give me this is what we used to ask you on the radio, and I understand you have signed up to be on that sad little station over there for another season. But now what as you look at NFC East, or as we speak, we know the Giants are in huge trouble at 0-3. They showed a little glimpse of something, and I don't know if they'll be able to build on that or not. 3 teams at 2-1. Saw what the Eagles did, saw what the Redskins did against the Raiders. That was pretty remarkable to see that defense completely shut the Raiders down. What do you make of this division after 3 games?
Yeah, I am surprised most of all by the Redskins. I did go into the season thinking the Giants would be the closest competitor to the Cowboys because of how well they played them last year, and they made the playoffs. They have a 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback. But obviously the offensive line and the lack of a running game are huge issues that they may not be able to overcome. And I am surprised that the Redskins are playing as well as they are on defense to completely shut down the Raiders like they did last night, from whether it was, Derek Carr and Michael Crabtree, or it was, Marshawn Lynch in the running game. It was complete and total domination. And then I thought Kirk Cousins looked exceptionally good. The Redskins are a surprise to me. I would have to say that I think they're the second best team in the division right now behind the Cowboys, and that the Eagles are somewhere in there, capable of beating either one of the teams and contending for sure. As Carson Wentz becomes a better quarterback. I still think he has an amazing skill set, and I'll be surprised if he doesn't ultimately become a top 5 quarterback at some point in his career. Carson Wentz, I'm talking about.
Wentz, yeah. Boy, that's interesting you say that, because I had a thought. I think he and Dak, this is going to be fun. This is going to be the next 10 years, 2 quarterbacks, and they both can move. They're both pretty big. Wentz might be a little bigger than Dak. In fact, he's probably about a couple of inches taller than Dak. Just a little bit bigger guy. Dak's a big enough guy. They can both move, and they can both, make people miss in space. I thought the 2 of them, watching Wentz yesterday and then watching Dak today, was pretty. I mean, that was a lot of fun, and you can think about that. Ed, do you ever think Kirk Cousins, could they just put him on the franchise tag for the next 8 years, or is that just, do they finally run out of that?
I know you're being humorous, but they can only do it 1 more year, and it would be hugely expensive.
Okay,
and they might have to do it anyway.
Isn't that amazing? Did you see little Danny Snyder just whooping it up? He
was right out there locking them up with the players too.
Yeah, he was right in the middle of that.
I saw one lineup of players and owners, and the player next to the owner had one of those Zeke cutoff jerseys on, and I thought the owners should have to wear those if they're going to be down on the field. Let's cut off the owner's shirt and expose the midriff on the owners.
No, America couldn't take that. Who, of all the owners, I'll tell you real quick, I'll give you my power rankings on owners who would be able to pull that off. Steve Bisciotti, number 1. I mean, that's a guy. He's got kind of that Steven Seagal look about him.
Yeah.
And really,
I've got my sailboat and Bimini look to him. He would be tanned. I know that. I know he would be tanned.
Oh no, that guy works out. In fact,
he's young. He's relatively young.
I guess. I used to work for him. I don't know if you ever know that at Aerotech, a company he started many years ago. Now I literally.
You showed him.
Oh my gosh, Ed! Oh, you're taking shots. I don't know who would be second place. And McAdoo's letting things get away from him. That all blue look he went with yesterday was a little rough.
He's only a coach.
Yeah, that's
true. You're talking
true.
about owners.
Oh, if we stick with owners, I think Stephen Ross would be okay. I think Mara would be pasty but in shape. I think Tish would be in shape, and after that I'm out.
I'm going with Martha Ford.
Oh my gosh, who is that? Where is she? Who's she? Oh,
Detroit Lions owner.
Okay, the Fords. Yeah, I should have clued in on that. The Ford family. That's good. Now, wait, who owns? I mean, the people own the Packers.
Packers would be Mark Murphy, I guess. Kind of the guy who acts as the owner, and he's a former player, and he's in reasonably good shape and fairly young by the standard of owners and sports writers.
All right. I don't know where this is headed. We need to.
I don't even know why we started.
We need to cut. You did. You actually are the one.
Well, I just said one thing. You extrapolated it into this.
I think that's right. I think we should be back on, like, pardon my take right now with where we've gone with this. Ed, final thoughts as we say goodnight to everybody. We're recording this late. Ed, I'm on Central Time right now, and it is 12:25 a.m. We'll be posting this soon. Ed, I want you to get some rest tonight and wake up early and really get this out to the country. Yeah,
okay.
And I want to continue to say this. One of the great things and one of the real rewarding things about doing this with you and just kind of the podcast we have rolling right now is that more and more people are lining up to want to partner with us, and that's exciting. That's an exciting thing, and so I think that's going to get our message out to more and more people. Big win for the Cowboys. I think more people listen to podcasts after victories. So, Ed, I know we've always been impartial. But if it...
Are you getting at the pom-poms? Is that what you're saying?
No, not really. But if it helps our podcast numbers, I will root like hell for a Cowboys win. But that doesn't mean I'm rooting for the Cowboys. Ed, okay. Final thoughts on tonight's big win for the Cowboys out in Arizona, 28-17 over the Cardinals.
Here are my two final thoughts. The defense and the special teams should not be overlooked in what they did tonight in the game against Arizona, because the Cowboys' first three touchdown drives started at the Arizona 33, 46, and at midfield. And my final takeaway is if you look at where the Cowboys are at 2-1, it's pretty impressive given that their first three opponents finished last year ranked 2nd, 4th, and 10th in the NFL in total defense.
That's good stuff, Ed. That is what we've come to expect from you. Those kinds of numbers that you throw out at the end of the show. Really appreciate it this evening, staying up late, getting it done, and then as people make their way to work tomorrow morning, they can hear us talk about a Cowboys victory. Ed, say goodnight.
Good night.
And that is Doomsday for Week 3 of this season. Good night, everybody.
Lights are shining, stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles for your son. They're living in the city now, you don't see them anymore. This year will not be like the ones before. And the streets are all but empty, the bars have all shut down, and it's hard to find a friend inside this godforsaken town. That emptiness, it feels from your head down to your toes. I'm sorry, baby, that's just the way it goes. Once you were a young girl with lovers by the score, money by the hand.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl, and some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.